So, I guess we're live.
Okay,
Yep.
so I guess we're live. Let's talk, maybe start with the Trump debate. We'll go a little bit into Trudeau, some Trump strategies, and some things that are going on in Mexico, as well as Conor McGregor today.
Yes. So the Trump debate is upcoming tonight, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that might happen. Some of them that are pretty much foreseeable. But what do you think the main takeaway will be from tonight for most people?
Well, I think Trump's much further ahead in the polling than is actually being portrayed by the media. The media is using biased polling right now. I figure it's going to be a landslide for Trump. Kamala needs this debate desperately to try to bring things a little bit closer, but I really think the debate's not going to have much of an impact. I think she'll have a reasonably okay showing, while Trump could either have a spectacular showing or an okay showing. She does better in structured debates, meaning the microphones will be cut off and it will just be asked direct questions, a little less back and forth. So she should be doing okay in that. What do you think?
Well, it seems like at first they wanted to quieten the mics for Biden, and now they didn't want the mics to be quieted for Kamala because she wanted that moment of like, I'm a woman, I'm speaking. But both CNN and Trump said, hey, no, we're going to stay with the debate format that we had agreed upon, even though it was for Biden. So I think she's going to be missing a little bit of, ability to persecute Trump and come off as the prosecutor.
Yeah, I think Trump was really smart in the way he prepped for these debates because he used the RFK strategy in doing live podcast after live podcast after podcast. He did 1 to 2 hour interviews with people that were libertarian, that were conservative, that were liberal. He went into hostile territory. He did CNN type interviews in mainstream media. He really did everything and covered the gamut here. So he is already used to being in front of the cameras in the pressure situation, but he really amped things up and got his repetitions in and his practice in. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, did the one CNN interview that was highly edited, really contrived, and she had to have her support animal, Tim Walz, there. The thing is, she's not very good, and she's not going to be very good the first time meeting Trump. Her and Trump have never been face to face. He's got an ambiance and a presence to him, and I really think he's going to be able to push her around kind of emotionally without actually seeming like an asshole. What do you think?
And Tim Pool, the commentator, is the pool boy, had a good point where
Pool boy.
he said that one of the ways that Trump could basically not come off as woman hater, but highlighting the fact that she is a woman and there are a lot of people in the United States who just wouldn't vote for a woman, is by negging her, which is this kind of tactic that some people that like show people how to date use, which is to give compliments but slightly backhanded. So he could, like, one of the best strategies would be for him to say, Madam Vice President, to remind people that she is still the Vice President and not a lot has been done, and a lot of the non-changing things that she's proposing she hasn't done in 3 years.
Well, I think she took the smartest strategy possible, which was basically take all of Trump's points, the policies. The issue she's going to have is, I think she views Trump as a conservative, which he's really not. Trump is kind of new populist. He has a lot of libertarian beliefs and liberal beliefs. So she stole the conservative policies rather than the populist, libertarian and liberal policies. So like, she's very pro-war. She's having this whole pro-war mantra come around her as far as Dick Cheney, who's now the CEO of Halliburton, has kind of endorsed her along with his battle buddy daughter, Liz Cheney. They're both warmongers. For them to endorse Kamala Harris publicly, I don't think is a good endorsement. It would have been better if they would have just stayed quiet and donated the money for her. So she's really looking like the war candidate.
Yeah, and it really says something. And I think, again, with all of the things that Trump could come up to her and say, hey, you haven't done this, 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 and this. How come now you're changing all of your positions to be essentially the same as mine, even though you've had 3 years, more than 3 years, to affect some of these changes? She was the border czar, even though they try to memory hole that. And she didn't really visit the border. And now she's saying that she also wants to build a wall, even though back in 2019, when she was campaigning, she kept saying that that was a terrible waste of money and that they shouldn't do it. Also, currently, I think today or yesterday, the ACLU came out with this report about what her policy proposals were back in 2019 when she was running. And it came out that she wanted to not just defund ICE, but she wanted to give monetary support and taxpayer dollars for any immigrant that wanted to change their sex, which is insane.
Well, she's considered, by her voting record, she was the most leftist politician, according to her voting record. Now she's trying to play moderate and conservative, but she's saying she still has the same values, but she has new policies. Mm-hmm. Well, she's got new policies because she's lying or because she's a conservative now? She's still running in the Democratic Party with all these conservative ideals. I think as soon as she gets elected, she's going to go back to radical leftism, but that's just me.
And I mean, on the debate itself, what do you think some of the better questions might be for either of them or for both of them?
Well, I think he's going to have to really highlight her voting record on what it was when she was really leftist and ask why kind of has she changed. He really, really, really should highlight that Dick Cheney is now supporting her and that he is the head of Halliburton. This allows him to really separate himself from the traditional rhinos. And there's one more thing I need to say here. I've been looking at the polling extremely close. This is why I think it's going to be really a runaway election for Trump. The thing I'm really looking for, though, is down ballot. Down ballot, a lot of these traditional rhino Republican candidates are not endorsing Trump and are not endorsing his populist values. So you're seeing in the polling, Trump's running away with the polling numbers, but everybody down ballot, these new conservatives that are coming over to the party are not wanting to vote down ballot for traditional Republican candidates that aren't going to endorse food freedom and other populist policies.
Yeah, and I mean, she has, right now at least, one of her only strong points is, and the one that she's focused on a lot, is abortion. And so she has that whole abortion talking point that is very important to women that want to vote for a woman of color. And Trump has been kind of good and bad on it, both for bad for Republicans, good for Republicans, good for liberals, bad for liberals. So he doesn't really have a super strong position at the moment, which I think is in his favor.
I completely disagree.
Because he needs to be able to tell the people that it's up to them. They should vote.
Trump has the best abortion policy that there is. He says, let states decide. Because there's so much of a reft on so many issues like abortion, he's kicking it back to the states to give state power, to give the people the power. The people can move states and move, and it's leaving it up to individual states rather than putting a federal mandate. Now, might think abortion should have a federal mandate, but in order for the country to heal, you're going to have to let issues like abortion and other highly divisive issues be kicked to the states.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why people think he doesn't have a strong position, but in fact, he does have a strong position, which is
a position of healing.
Go back to
she wants to put a federal mandate.
Yeah.
Half the people aren't going to agree with that. Mm-hmm. So, do you have anything else on Trump before we move over to the other T, which is Trudeau? I have one more thing, but you go first.
Well, I was wondering just how do you think it's going to be handled, especially with the immigration thing coming up and with the law that they want to pass about everybody has to vote with ID and everybody has to be an American to vote and be able to prove it. I mean... Well,
this is only some states. A lot of states have laws where illegal immigrants can vote, and people find this absolutely crazy, but there are loopholes in the law where as long as you identify as an American citizen, you can vote as an American citizen. So I think the Republicans are actually doing a really good job at looking at election interference right now, because I'm noticing a lot of articles come up where they're catching people and catching different schemes for election interference because of what happened last time. So maybe the last time the election got stolen was a good thing because it's really putting conservatives on their toes. But I wanted to ask you a question. Do you know what?
If the election got
Do you know what
stolen
Kamala?
for YouTube?
Do you know what Kamala Harris's father's name is?
Don't remember something Harris. I know he was a deep Marxist.
Do you know what Donald Trump's name is?
Donald?
Donald J. Trump. Kamala Harris's father's name's Donald J. Harris. So she's kind of debating her father tonight, which is funny.
The complete opposite reflection of her father, I'm guessing.
Well, her father's a Marxist as well, and a Marxist economist, and she comes from that. So maybe she's not as stupid as she seems.
No.
I think she's a lot smarter, and she wants to implement a lot of these Marxist policies, but she can't come out and say that. But maybe let's move back to our homeland, and maybe not move back, but talk about Trudeau.
Canadian land.
So you want to start it out?
Well,
okay. Well, Trudeau is probably the most unpopular he's ever been in Canada right now. He did have a coalition with Jagmeet Singh, which kind of gave him the ability to do whatever he wanted. Now, Jagmeet Singh is the leader of the NDP party. He's now officially ended that coalition. A lot of people are speculating that this is going to lead to an election because they can now call a snap election. I don't think this is going to be the case at all. Jagmeet needs one more year, not until 2025, and that's when he'll get his pension. So I think he's actually outwardly ended the coalition, but I think he's going to continue to vote with Trudeau right up until he can get his pension. Then he'll call a snap election.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I think on Trudeau. I mean, I think it's good that he's become more and more popular, even within the press and within the press, which is highly controlled by the state and which is essentially state media. They're starting to allow for different opinions to shine through because the decay of Canada has become so evident to not just those in Canada, but the ones outside of it, that they can't really keep the facade up. And I think it's good that he's starting to lose more and more popularity, but I'm just shocked about all the even international media articles that I see kind of dunking on Trudeau, which used to never happen. He used to be the golden child of North America.
Well, I will say this. You look over to France and they're making coalition governments to keep the Conservatives out. You're seeing all these coalitions be made. This is what's expected to happen in Canada. They're currently polling whether they should make a coalition before or after. And the consensus kind of is they all want to run as maybe individual parties, but the NDPs won't run in certain districts so the Liberals can get the votes or vice versa. And if they can consolidate enough of the vote so to keep the Conservatives out of a super majority, then they'll make a coalition. At this point, though, the Conservatives are so far ahead because a decade of bad policies that it's not going to matter if they have a coalition or not. They're still not going to be able to beat the Conservatives. But now they know they're getting ready for election because they've been in the coalition. I think both parties are going to try to really start defining themselves and getting some voters back. They're hoping that they already know they're going to lose the election. What they want to do is not lose it by such a big margin that they'll be able to form a coalition either before or after the election to be able to block the Conservatives from completely taking over Canada.
Yeah, and from still having some sort of pull within the Parliament, I'm guessing.
Okay, why don't we move on to the school shootings that have happened. Now there's two here that we're going to be talking about. Number one is the recent one in Georgia. A couple of people died in that one, but there was the Trans Manifesto that was recently released.
From Tennessee, which happened about a year ago.
And they covered that manifesto up with everything they had. Every manifesto that comes out when it's a white male, it's like, this is who it is, this is his identity, he's a right-wing conservative, they want to plaster him up. And those cases are actually rare, but you're seeing a lot of
trans violence, basically, or
not just trans violence, but non-binary. People are very
ideologically motivated.
Ideologically confused, which I think is pushing them towards violence.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, we also have the whole debate. Well, that's not even a debate. The reality of SSRIs, which are antidepressant medications, which in most cases in recent violence instances in schools, not to say the word because of YouTube, a lot of them have been under the influence of SSRIs, which we're still haven't tried to figure out why it is and what's causing it, or maybe getting these kids off of them. We just say the guns, the guns, the guns.
Well, in the States, you have an amendment right to own a gun and to be able to protect yourself, which I think is a good thing. But if we want to come up to solutions for this, the Democratic solution is always the same thing: ban all guns. Well, the government's really becoming authoritarian and overreach, and most countries don't have guns. I don't think the Americans are going to want to give up their guns. I wouldn't want to give up my guns. And here's the thing: how are we going to come up with solutions to this? We really need to look at what's the driving factors. And like Nat just said, I think one of the biggest driving factors is the amount of medication these kids are having, whether it's antidepressants or Ritalin or things like this. That's really pushing it. We're not having good security at the schools, meaning the person that actually stopped the Georgia shooting was a security officer at the school. Having armed security officers within the school, or even armed teachers, may be a way to prevent school shootings. Right now you're having these no gun zones or no violent zones in schools. This makes the school a target because the shooter knows they can go into the school and there's going to be little to no resistance because there's nobody with a weapon there. Also, the mass shooting that happened with Alex Jones. Remember, Alex Jones said something and then he got $1 billion fine against him. That school had no locks on their doors, and they really covered that up, and they covered a lot of things up about that school, and then they tore down the school so nobody can do a thorough investigation. But do you have anything else about the mass shootings or schools?
Well, again, I think it furthers the whole ideological and gender debate and all of these things which people don't want to admit are actually causing more depression and more, like, focusing so much within the schools on these things. Like, if kids get bullied, then it's because they have some different sort of gender than the rest of the pupils. And then instead of discouraging someone from fully being like, oh, this is what I am and who I am, and seeking, professional help, we'll pump them full of SSRIs and then be surprised when not everybody is accepting. And instead of kind of reaching a moderate conclusion, the schools have been starting to push the gender ideology to a point where a lot of the other students start to feel like they're threatened if they don't, accept every single weird, let's say, thing that their classmates do. And of course, this causes resentment not only from the people that are not within the gender ideology, but also within those that have been told that they need to be accepted by everyone. And if they're not, then words are violence, so now they have an excuse to actually go commit violence.
Well, maybe before we move on to the next story, which is going to be Tenet media in Russia, as well as Trump supporters being put on a terrorist watch list en masse. Why don't we just tell the audience, because I don't think we did in the beginning, that this is our first live stream?
Yes. I don't think we have an audience, actually. No, we have 0 viewers.
Well, somebody might tune in when it's reposted.
Yes.
So if we're a little bit nervous and we're stuttering along
and talking really fast,
we decided to just have a lot of stories and to quickly go through each one to kind of keep the conversation moving. Filming something live is much different than filming something pre-recorded. This is how I'm feeling right now anyway.
Yes.
But okay, let's jump back into this Tenet media thing that happened with Lauren Chan and Tim Pool.
So what is Tenet media?
Well, why don't you tell me what Tenet media is? You probably have a better idea than I do.
Tenet media was one of those kind of media conglomerates that within YouTube, I forget what they're called, but essentially they kind of grab a lot of different creators or channels, and it becomes this kind of service for them. And it looked like, because when it came up, it was about a year ago, I started seeing all of these ads, and it had Lauren Southern and Dave Rubin and Tim Pool that were joining Benny Johnson, whom I really like. And it just seemed very out of the blue. It kind of sparked out of the blue. Was it going to be a new channel? Was it kind of like a Daily Wire sort of deal where it's a full-on media production? And then they just started releasing shows here and there, like Tim Pool's Culture War is on there. Some of Benny Johnson's things are on there, but it wasn't never really super clear what it was about and what the purpose was. I just kind of subscribed because that's where Culture War was with Tim Pool, and some very interesting debates happened there, but I didn't really kind of pay much attention to it.
Maybe we can talk about what the actual scandal is and what people are thinking is actually really happening here. Robert Barnes, an attorney, a constitutional attorney I watch a lot.
Your favorite.
My favorite attorney had quite the good theory on this, but let's go into what the scandal actually is first. The scandal was that this Tenet media approached Lauren Chan. Now, if you don't know Lauren Chan, she is originally from Canada, now lives in Tennessee, somewhere, maybe so. Tennessee, but at least she definitely lives in the States. She used to work for RT. So she had that in her past.
RT is the Russian media.
Russian news network. Yeah. So supposedly these investors approached her that wanted to invest in conservative content. They offered her a lot of money, and she was to recruit other people such as Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, things like this. That they would produce content on their own and give it to her, and she would give it.
It was syndicated
to the investor, basically syndicated.
They were paying for just those certain shows that they would.
But they were paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think Kim Iverson, who I also watch, was saying at one point they were giving up to $100,000 for a video that only got 8,000 watches, which is about $8, I guess, she was saying. So Lauren Chan was the main hook, who would get other content creators, according to this investigation. And it was being funded by two Russian spies. Russian spies.
Yeah. I mean, they might be. Who knows?
So this was kind of the Tenet media situation.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people are suspecting, especially if you look at the indictment, they're leaving a lot of things out of the indictment because the State Department had previously tried to run cases like this. But the issue that came up is they indicted some businesses. And when they indicted a business, they expect nobody to show up. But if somebody does show up, they're not liable for prosecution. So what happened in this one investigation they did, they indicted a Russian media company, and somebody showed up from the Russian media company and then wanted discovery. And once that discovery came out, a lot of links into Langley, into the CIA, things like this came out, and it looked like the entire case was brought to discredit people, not because it was actually legitimate. This time they left out a lot of the businesses and naming as many people as they could.
It wasn't named that much. There weren't that many names.
So a lot of people are suspecting that this is right before the election to create this Russian collusion again.
I mean, it's still coming back to Russia, not just with this whole situation, but just allegations from some Democrats saying that Russia will be involved within, and like there will be Russian interference within these elections, which is, I mean, it's like revisiting the past.
I'm going to be surprised if the money doesn't go back to Langley when the investigation is done, if it even gets done. I think at some point the case might just be dropped. They're just trying to discredit people with Russia. Yeah. I really wish they would get a new storyline. Stop using Russia. It would probably work better if you use China. Yeah. Number one, they have more money. People aren't used to hearing China.
And there might actually be some truth to that as well.
Okay, well, a connected story to that is actually quite a while ago, actually. The State Department classified Trump supporters as putting domestic terrorists, so they can put them on terrorist watch lists. This allowed them to investigate anybody that was a Trump supporter and anybody that they had contact with through email, phone, stuff like this. They would use the Patriot Act in order to do this. So it was pretty interesting.
And I mean, they were also using is it called Quiet Skies thing? Like what they did to Tulsi Gabbard. So they basically named her, said that she was a danger, and put her within these domestic terrorist lists, which when you go into an airport now, she's like fully searched. And it's part of this whole...
I would definitely say, I don't think they were trying to... they put Trump supporters en masse on this list, meaning they couldn't investigate them. I don't think they were investigating all Trump supporters. I think they just wanted to cast a wide net so they can go after very specific people. If you've seen a lot of people like Steve Bannon and other high-ranking officials in the Trump administration have been arrested and put in jailed but also you're going to want to investigate any adjacent supporters of Trump, because you were going to want to understand where a lot of the funding and the election funding for this 2024 campaign is coming up, and also how they can stop it and intimidate some of these people. So being able to investigate Trump supporters and adjacent financiers and people within the organization really helps to kind of stop the momentum of the Trump campaign, which has a lot of momentum. They're also able to, through these investigations, understand the exact demographics and techniques that the Trump administration wants to use in the upcoming election, which would be a huge help for them.
And I mean, it's just another way to kind of show their hand, I'm guessing, is the best way to say it. How I don't want to say scared, but yeah, scared. I don't want to say scared, but how scared they are, because not only with all of the Trump charges and everything that they've put just him through, but all the supporters. So creating this aura of danger and of, oh, you should be scared to support Trump, I think they think is going to work in their favor, but it really hasn't.
Okay, before we move on, I would say let's move on to something other than Trump, but the next one involves Trump too, and that's Amazon Alexa story. Then we're going to go into the migrant crisis, and then finally we're going to end with my favorite story of the day, which is going to be Conor McGregor. But next we're going to go into the Amazon Alexa story.
Mm-hmm. So it was discovered I believe it was a week ago by now, that Amazon's Alexa, when you would ask her, it's like the little digital device where you say, hey, I'm not going to say it, and then it replies back to you. When people would ask about how she felt or like what...
No, they would ask her, why should I vote for Donald Trump? And she would give a generic response saying, I don't want to influence the election.
Being apolitical.
I need to remain apolitical. But then they would ask it directly after, why should I support Kamala Harris? And it would give a long list of reasons of why you should support Kamala Harris. Or all those reasons were bogus as well.
Starting with she's a woman of color, which, I mean, it's not a policy position or any sort of position, and it shouldn't really dictate anything about an individual.
That's not a reason to vote for somebody. No. And that's not a reason why she should be put into office.
And
that's why Biden put her into office.
Yeah. Is that the story? Yeah. So of course, Amazon's going to be biased. I mean,
yeah, but I
don't think that was really a story.
I think it is a story because it shows the bias of big tech and how, like, when you type things into Google as well, it's extremely biased. After the Trump assassination, when you would put Trump, you would type his entire name and other things would come up. A lot of Kamala Harris news stories would come up.
And assassinations or assassination attempts on presidents, and it wouldn't show up either. But right. I mean, we know which way media leans.
But now that Trump is getting closer and closer to, it looks like maybe landing an election, a lot of these big tech executives are coming over to the Trump camp because they want protection. They're feeling like they're pissing into the wind right now if Kamala Harris doesn't win. So they're...
But I think also with the whole wanting protection thing, I don't think it's needed or warranted. Like, I don't really think if Trump wins, he would really actually go after them. They might try to do some discovery and stuff, but because it's been ingrained in so many people's heads that, oh, he's going to be this horrible fascist dictator, a lot of people actually believed it and now might be running scared. I mean, the letter from Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is very important because that actually shows some tinges of actual fascism with the government colluding with a corporation and essentially telling a corporation what to do.
Well, Trump's going to need allies within the big tech space. He's not extremely knowledgeable. He is a lot older, so people like Elon Musk, people like Elon Musk that came over, and now Zuckerberg. He's going to need these people as advisors. Now he'll take them as an advisory role. Mm-hmm. I think Elon Musk will actually play a really big role. And the way he's brought him into the administration and talked about making a ministry that's going to be completely transparent and third party to investigate how money's moving about the government and how corruption is happening, I think is a really good thing. So
the Department of Government. Excellency?
Well, that's
whatever he wants Elon Musk to head. My head is blank right now.
Well, let's move into the migrant crisis. Now, there's quite a few things here with the migrant crisis. one of the most recent ones that came up were these Venezuelan migrants within Colorado who are taking over apartment complexes and things like this. But if you've been watching the news lately, you know there's migrant crises in New York and California, all over the place, especially at the border. What's very interesting about this Venezuelan migrant crisis is the Sinaloa cartel was the main cartel of organized crime and drugs within the United States. And recently, the U.S. government has targeted them and kind of dismantled them so they don't have the same structural organization as they did before. Well, at the same time, they've kind of allowed these Venezuelan migrants to come in who are ultra violent criminal organization, which is kind of really taking over a lot of the organized crime within the United States. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on this. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, if you take people that are coming from a place that is, you know, completely ravaged and where they have to survive by being violent, me saying it coming from Mexico, I mean, of course, there's going to be gang members coming through the border, and they're going to be organized, and they're going to feel entitled to do certain things. And the fact that, oh, we cannot police or do anything because, oh, they're coming from such a hard place. I mean, you shouldn't circumvent the laws of your country just because you feel bad for someone.
I got to hand it to Venezuela. Man, I might not like Venezuela as a country, but they had a good policy in order to get rid of a lot of their crime. They made a deal with a lot of the prisoners and convicts where they would let them go if they would just leave the country. And a lot of them did leave the country, and they started to migrate to the United States. We have a Venezuelan migrant crisis in Mexico right now. It's kind of being used as a holding zone before people move up to the United States. So Venezuela, just like a lot of other South American countries, solved their problem by offering a deal to criminals to just leave the country.
Yeah, and I think that's what gets lost in a lot of the conversation, and what people don't want to look at or admit or accept is that not every single, you know, asylum seeker is actually an asylum seeker. People lie, people do all sorts of things, and just because you have a bleeding heart shouldn't mean you should be taken advantage of, no matter where you are.
Well, I also want to say that I was watching a documentary recently about this network of NGOs that is funded by the UN, the United States government, and other big dollar organizations. And this network is setting up sites where you can get water, food, clothes, all throughout Mexico and some of South America. So you can get up to Central America, so you can get up to the United States. So it seems to be very organized, which was just very eye-opening when I watched that documentary.
Well, yeah, giving them the roots, giving them medical care, and I mean, you can sort of understand if you don't want people to, you know, perish along the journey. And it's a way to be kind to other people, but it's also a way to encourage it, because giving full-on maps of the routes and cell phones and anything anybody could ever need to cross into the United States is essentially encouraging it. And now that Kamala Harris is saying that she wants to build the wall, and now she's worried about immigration because she's seeing that in the polls that's something that people are worried about.
Building the wall used to be racist. Now she wants to build the wall. Like, let's.
And she says that has been her position this whole time, which is just not true.
Well, let's get into the last story, which is my favorite story. You may know a little less about it, but this is the Conor McGregor story. He's announced his bid to run for the Irish presidency, which is going to be held next year, I guess.
Yeah, President of Ireland. I don't know much about it other than that. No, I dropped something.
Breaking things. I know a little bit more about it. I followed Conor for a lot of his career. I used to be a fan of him. He has an alcohol and addiction problem a lot more, so I've really fallen out of favor to him. Ireland is in a strange position. Their government is really outwardly overstepping their bounds and saying that they're implementing policies that their people directly don't want. They're saying their people do want them. And it's just like, with the amount of migrants coming there, it's causing huge tension because you're having military-aged migrants come into the country. It's causing a lot of violence. People are being stabbed, and then they're saying it's right-wingers who are stabbing and raping the citizens of this country. But the statistics just don't bear that out. they're able to say it's right wingers because it's male violence going up, but it's male immigrants that are creating these violence. And
in most of the cases, that's not generalized, but yeah.
The tension is palpable within that country. I watch a ton of Irish independent media, whether it's journalists on the ground or YouTubers or the mainstream media from Ireland itself. And there is a palpable tension there where if they get somebody like Conor McGregor to get in there, I think they need to be very cautious. I actually support all of Conor McGregor's outward ideals because he has a lot of Trump-like policies, and I like those. The issue is Conor McGregor is not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is older. He was trained in business. He gets his way not through violence, but through business dealings and the art of the deal, things like this. He's very good at negotiations and interpersonal connection. Conor McGregor, on the other hand, although he is a businessman and he's done very well in business, I will say, he's prone to violence, especially if his business dealings break down or he just feels disrespected. He's a lot younger than Donald Trump as well, so he has a lot of bravado. If we look back, just what's been on camera with Conor McGregor, he went into a pub and there was an old man on a stool. He offered him a free shot of his new whiskey he put out, and the gentleman politely declined it, so Conor McGregor hit him in the head. This was all on camera, and this is going much too far. Other than that, he threw a gate at a bus that messed up another fighter's eye during the because he thought Khabib Nurmagomedov was on the bus. So he is prone to violence. There is also, this wasn't on camera, but it's a well-known rumor within Ireland that in the middle of Dublin, Conor McGregor got in a fist fight with a cartel member. And this last thing I bring it up about Conor McGregor, I understand that sometimes there's false allegations, so I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent, but there have been a lot of rape allegations that come up. Some of them seem credible, but there's two that were completely uncredible and on camera that completely discredit it. So, but just because he didn't do the two didn't mean he didn't do the others. But I'm not saying he's a rapist. But what I am saying is all this stuff adds up where when you add the coke, the alcohol, the level of violence he goes to on camera and in public blatantly, you really got to be careful because this may be what the EU actually wants. The EU may want to put a hothead in power there in a place where people are going to follow him, maybe to a detriment of violence. If they turn violent in Ireland and they have a leader promoting violence, it can be January 6th times 10. January 6th actually wasn't that bad and didn't get that violent. But if you have something that is much more violent, the EU is going to use that to implement draconian laws, not just in Ireland, but to sweep across Europe.
And I mean, it could be a return to the violence that we had, that has happened in Ireland in the past with the IRA. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but it is not. I think a lot of people are starting to, especially like within the US media, to like the idea of a Conor McGregor because he exemplifies a lot of the things they believe in. But it's a completely, as Guy says, it's a completely different situation. And this is the problem with, number one, not doing full research, but also kind of just going along with what, like if somebody has some of your positions, you support them full stop.
You gotta understand, this is a populist movement that's coming up that's highly emotionally charged, so people really get behind these things. But you need smart leaders like Donald Trump who really isn't provoking violence. If you have hothead leaders and control of a populist movement, it can go really bad. They're going to try to use that as leverage over the existing governments. Even if you don't like these existing governments, they may get baited into situations that are going to allow these current governments to implement draconian laws like hate speech and arresting political dissidents.
And I mean, I think if he does get in, if this does work out for him, I think it would be a good example, actually, of the dangers of populism and populism taken to in a completely different direction, and what people usually criticize about populism might become true within Ireland if he keeps getting support and he actually makes it.
Yeah, well, I want to say one more thing. I really like populism, and I really like Donald Trump. But Donald Trump was a very smart leader, and the people had control over Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't have control over the leader. What I mean by that is very often Trump gives these very long speeches, and part of the reason he did that was to test ideas and to say what he liked and didn't like as far as policy went. And when the crowd would boo him down, like when he started promoting vaccines and saying this is the greatest thing ever, he was getting booed off stage at his own rallies. So he quietly changed his views privately on that. And there was a lot of other things he changed. Somebody like a Conor McGregor may not be so have their ear to the street and understand. Well, he may think he has control over the people. The people don't have control over him, which can be very dangerous.
Yes, and it's
especially if he leads them towards violence.
Yeah, and it's very important to have that realization of what does this leader or person actually want to accomplish and do and why. And I think in Conor McGregor's case, it is about ego and about having the power, and that is exactly the wrong person to be leading a populist movement, because that's exactly the kind of person that can actually take advantage of the support of the people.
I think Conor McGregor is going to win an election if he gets in. He already has major support populistly, but also other leaders like Donald Trump and social media leaders like Andrew Tate, things like that.
But I would warn, Andrew Tate I don't care about, but I would warn a lot of even Trump probably, but a lot of the people that are throwing their support behind him to be careful about, number one, what's going to be coming out about him, and number two, about eventually if something happens.
Well, he has policies that I support, so I will probably support him, but I'm going to constantly be giving warnings and trying to shape his behavior through having a voice and telling other people to have a voice so they can really keep the reins on him, because you don't want massive violence that's going to be used against the people to implement laws. Now, I've said that too many times, so...
what are the policy positions that you would support from him?
Policy positions is going to be food freedom. I'm going to obviously... So he's going to support farmers within Ireland, I think.
He said he wants to do that?
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of support amongst the farmers, the people's movement. He's also going to push back against these crazy laws that have been put into Ireland, such as these LGBTQ laws, these hate speech laws, censorship laws, basically just bring back I think he's going to try to bring back common sense, but I think he's going to use a very direct method rather than negotiation. But then
the problem is you can't beat common sense into people.
Yeah, but maybe I'm wrong about I can be wrong about him. So I'm glad I'm watching him from a distance, and he's not the leader of Mexico or the United States. Watching in Ireland, the repercussions for Ireland is they'll implement laws on Ireland and the rest of the EU. So we'll see what happens. As of right now, I'll support McGregor, but I would keep a very close eye on him and have a word of caution when I do talk about him.
Which I think that measured position is something that a lot of people are losing within all of the elections that are happening. And I think it's important because you never know what's going to come out, what someone's going to decide to do. So being able to critically analyze whoever you're supporting or whatever you're throwing yourself behind is important, and it's something that is being lost, I think, within all spaces.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up for today.
Sure. So
we went on about Conor McGregor for a long time there at the end. Yeah. But thank you for anybody that obviously obviously nobody watched the stream live, but anybody that's going to watch it after, because I hopefully it's going to post on our webpage there. Also,
we're still figuring things out.
Thank you for everybody that's subscribed to the channel.
Yes.
So we're approaching 1,000. We're almost there, and it's been a long, hard road to get to 1,000 subscribers. But it's a very rewarding feeling being this close.
Yeah, and a lot of the videos that we have been posting are in Spanish, but eventually we would like to make lives in English and then post videos in Spanish. Maybe me doing some lives in Spanish as well. But we don't want to forget about our English-speaking viewers either, because we do talk a lot about U.S. and Canada stuff.
We now live in Mexico. Half our audience speaks Spanish, and we're trying to put some content out there in Spanish, but we're also going to continue with the English.
Yeah, we kind of want to do both. Okay. But like, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and again, sorry for rambling, I guess, for so long.
Okay, adios.
That's it.
You can stop.